Hi class, and welcome to the first PowerPoint slide lecture presentation. I am your instructor, Mark Duncan. I included a couple personal slides in here. I've never done that before with a National American University class because there's never enough time, and I probably should not have on this one because I'm going to have to put on my skates to get through almost 40 slides, and these don't load very well if you go anywhere above about 18 minutes, so we got our work cut out for us. Well, I do. So first things first, let's talk about a definition of marketing. And from my MBA days in Hawaii, this slide, which I recalled from the 80s, really changed my life, actually. MBA, I think I mentioned in my bio that I have an undergrad in BS and an undergrad in wildlife biology, BS in wildlife, and a MBA or an MS in environmental science, and I kind of went off in that direction until I moved back into Hawaii, and I did start a business, and I thought I'd better take some business classes, and so I got an MBA, and it really changed my life. And what the marketing class was the one out of that really turned things around for me. So I thought at the time that it was my marketing instructor that had come up with these three questions, and it was only about a year ago in reading an article by Peter Drucker that I realized it was him. So anyway, I don't know that my instructor ever took credit for it. I just assumed it was his thing. But he said, marketing is about three things. It's about answering these three questions over time. First would be, what is my product or service? And how you answer that defines both your customer and your competition. So I would say real quickly that I don't think Apple, when you hold the iPhone up, says that's an iPhone. As far as what is it, it's not a phone even anymore. A phone is just a function that it performs. It is instead, I would believe, that they would call it not a computer. It's an entertainment and communication device, I think, is kind of what they'd say, and they developed the subsequent iterations from its initial introduction, I think with that in mind, in terms of when they added features every 18 months. So if you define it, depending on how you define your product service, I said, affects your customer. So their customer is defined not just by the product and product features, but things like its price and where you can get it, how you get it serviced, all that kind of thing. And then the last thing that you have to answer over time is what is the value proposition? Now, if you go back into the 1990s and you think of a company like Kodak, this should take on significant relevance to you because Kodak doesn't even exist anymore. And once upon a time, it was adequate to say we sell cameras, but that even wasn't their real business or business model. What they did was they sold film and developed the film. That's where they made the money, and they kind of gave the cameras away. And so when the digital camera came along, they should have been rethinking their answer to these questions. And interestingly, they invented the digital camera and then sold it off, sold the patent off, and that was their demise. So how you answer these questions is important. What's a value proposition? Well, simply, it's a set of benefits or value that a company promises to deliver to customers to satisfy their needs. So what is quality is job one, everyday low prices, expect more, pay less. They sound like taglines, and the best value propositions can in fact be used as taglines. The best value propositions are stated in 8 words or less, and the really good ones are either 3 or 4 words, like the ones I just laid out. But a value proposition, I still like the definition that my marketing prof gave, which is that it's how your customer views you. It's how your product or service is viewed in the mind's eye of your customer relative to the competition. So how your product or service is seen or viewed in the mind's eye of the customer relative to the competition. I think, again, go back and think Apple. Think it through in that context. Marketing is all about meeting a need. If it doesn't meet a need, then it's not gonna survive. A need can be either functional or psychological. So you take a Nike shoe. Functionally, it's a physiological need. It's a piece of clothing, but good marketing will attach a higher level need through branding to that product, and so the days of people killing one another over a Michael Jordan Nike shoe seem to be gone, thank goodness. But that's where the psychological need comes in. We have different level needs. They start at the basic with physiological and then go up from there. There are some videos nested in these icons that you might take a look at that demonstrate how some advertising focuses in and emphasizes needs that certain products satisfy. So, your textbook definition of marketing. But I've already given you one or a couple. Uh, Marketing has evolved over the years. It started out as primarily production, make things faster and cheaper. Brings to mind Henry Ford's famous line of around Model Ts and Model As, you can have any color that you want as long as it's black. It was in the 90s. That kind of persisted as a philosophy: make them better, make them faster, or make them cheaper, make them faster, until about the 50s, where there was competition became more acute, and so we developed a philosophy around sales, aggressive sales, and then in the 70s and 80s, you began to put more emphasis on actually satisfying customers. evolved to some large extent in the automobile industry when uh, Japanese car companies basically followed a production and sales strategy and then uh, saw an opportunity in competing against American car companies because they knew that there was built-in obsolescence and that maybe they should start making the cars better and last longer and still cheaper, which they did. Uh, and so there evolved this attention to creating products that the customer could experience in a manner over time that that was maximized instead of minimized. And then more recently, there has been this emphasis on a societal dimension to marketing and business operations. Uh, there are four things that marketers or businesses can do to develop a strategy for their product or business or service. And those four items are called the four P's: product, price, place, promotion. And they're also known as commonly as the marketing mix. And so again, businesses can manipulate those to various degrees to distinguish themselves from competing products or services. At least in the mind's eye of the customer. Um, One of the things, remember those three questions: what's your product? What's your product, service? Who's your customer? What's your value proposition? This is target market's all about who's your customer, and what businesses strive to do is to have a keen idea and a narrow focus on certain segments. And a segment is a group of people with a common need or set of characteristics. And then what businesses want to do is to identify uh, a few of those, one to a few of those segments that's a fit with their particular business or their particular service. And in doing so, by not trying to make a product that makes everybody happy, but rather makes a narrower group happy, you can increase your level of customer satisfaction, and you can do that not just through how you design and deliver the product, but how you maintain a relationship with your customer thereafter and over time. For service industries, that's really important, like selling insurance and that sort of thing. So once we get an idea of what marketing actually is, one of the things that we strive to do is develop a marketing plan. And I think that going back to the 4 Ps, most people consider marketing about promotion, advertising, and sales. But really, it's far more strategic. It's far broader, and requires rather an understanding of many different dimensions, like my customer, what do they expect, how do they interact with my product, what do they expect in terms of levels of service and quality, etc., and what are they willing to pay for it. And what we look for is a competitive advantage, and a competitive advantage is something that you do that delineates you distinctively from other competing companies or services that provide the same product. Maybe you make it a lot better, maybe you satisfy a higher level esteem need, whatever. But competitive advantage, the good ones, are not things that can be easily imitated or emulated by competing products. A competitive advantage for both Microsoft and Apple is there's a few. One of them is the quality of their employees, also their reputation, their logos, all kinds of things that speak to how the company is perceived by the public and by its customers. Um, so strategic planning is just a process of creating and maintaining a fit between the organization's objective and resources and evolving market opportunities. So one of the things that we look to do in a business is represent concepts visually so that we can uh, jointly have a better sense jointly of understanding what's going on. And one of the tools uh, that's used in management and in marketing is the uh, Boston Consulting Group matrix, where essentially products that you carry or services that you carry are put into 4 different categories. Uh, Stars, the things that are really doing well; question marks, things that are doing okay, but they could fall off the radar, or they could keep doing well. dogs are things that just aren't doing well at all for whatever reason. And then your cash cows are things you strive over time to produce, uh, like U-Ban coffee for Procter and Gamble or Folgers, if they own them. I'm not sure they do. Um, the iPhone was a star. Maybe it's going to turn into, how do you turn it into a cash cow when everybody's got an iPhone? Well, one of the things you do is you create other revenue streams, as Apple has, uh, so that even if somebody doesn't buy the newest version, you're still making money because of your contracts with the providers, uh, people buying apps, so on and so forth. General Motors model is nothing more than their own modified version of the Boston Consulting Group. Once we get an idea of how we're going to manipulate our 4Ps or our marketing mix, and we've got our products organized into some kind of format where we know, I mean, we have an idea of how they're performing. We want to write a marketing plan that would organize all this information into a strategy. And there's a slide that I put together that asks or demonstrates the two ways basically that a company can increase its revenues and or its profits, which are two different things. You can have revenues but lose money, obviously. But fundamentally, you can increase sales on the revenue side. You can increase sales, you can get new customers, you can go into new markets. And on the expense side, it's all about identifying sources of cost reductions and how to do all these processes and operations more cheaply or cost effectively. Obviously, we want to do all these things ethically, and fundamentally, the best way to ensure that you're dealing ethically is to be have a good product and deal honestly and fairly with all the people in your value chain, from your suppliers to your customers. And that is often stated in a mission statement and a stated policy around corporate social responsibility. Uh, Businesses anymore seek to create business models, and business model is how you make your money that are sustainable, not only from the company's or firm's perspective, how do we operate so that we're sustainable, but also consider that within the greater context of sustainability of your local economy, your region, uh, state, national, and global. More and more, green marketing has taken its foothold, that businesses have found that by having some toutable level of sustainability, they can actually appeal to a large amount of the marketplace. So green marketing is a good example of that, where companies like Whole Foods and um, Patagonia and others really have ingrained it as part of their overall delivery of products and operations. Most companies anymore have something, whether it's fundraising or recycling or something, that they tout around green marketing and sustainability. Cause-related marketing is just what it says it is. When you check out at the grocery store and they ask you if you want to donate another 1% of your bill to whatever, you can say yes or no. So in prepping our marketing plan, we want to look at two things. We want to look at the external environment and the internal environment. And the ultimate output of that is what they call a SWOT analysis, where you organize your company's strengths and weaknesses and then identify opportunities and threats uh, that are external. So an external item might be interest rate trends, whereas an internal item could be the educational level of your employees, and that could be either a strength or a weakness depending on your business, the industry sector that you're in, as well as your own individual business. Uh, Another thing that we look at of concern are demographics. Um, what are the demographic trends that can affect your business? and they tend to go hand in hand with political issues as well. I'm a boomer. I can say that when Reagan was president, we hear a lot of comparisons often with decisions now and decisions in the 80s when Reagan was president. I was a boomer then, and I was in my 30s, and I can tell you that we ruled as a group. I mean, we drove the economy as an educated group of both workers and consumers. Now we are codgers that are more and more financial uh, draw on the economy. So comparing those two eras, rather, in my estimation, is like comparing, to beat up an adage, apples and oranges. It just completely different situation, completely different demographics, uh, and I don't think it's germane at all to compare the two. The lesson in that being that demographics, you have to look at the current demographics and the demographics that are coming online to try to estimate what the impact's going to be on the economy in your particular business. Uh, global more and more companies want to be global because, again, new there are new global markets. that you can sell into. You get economies of scale. This is a common question in other classes I teach of what are some of the benefits of globalization, and often students will say, oh, and what is a company that's gone global that you can think of for whom it's been, really good? And they'll say somebody like beer, like Budweiser or Coca-Cola, and that's all about selling into new markets, but I can guarantee you that Coca-Cola doesn't produce products in the United States and then turn around and ship them to India. They enter setting up new supply chains and production processes makes sense for a product like that in other countries. Not to produce it here doesn't make any sense at all to export it, really, because your transportation costs would kill you. That's not always the case with certain products. You can make up for that by shipping it back, but something like soda, it's best done, or beer, with licensing agreements and other locations, not only to get the economies of scale and tap into existing distribution channels, but also to control, for quality control issues, and to respond to political realities. So Budweiser, produced in Japan, is all bottled and done and distributed through agreements with Kirin. Uh, Products that really lend themselves to producing and maybe shipping overseas because there's so little. Uh, you don't have to make any changes to the recipes or ingredients. Would be things like steel, uh, prescription medicines, that sort of thing. Pricing is an issue, and this dumping is an issue, and will be more and more. I threw them in here. I don't have time to talk too much about them, but they're going to become more and more issues uh, with this new administration. And I think what's important is to understand the relationships that exist between producing things in other locations, whether you're exporting to them or bringing them back, whatever. It's important on a product by product, sector by sector basis that you understand the actual relationships.